Hey guys, Akio Murasaki here as usual. Today I want to raise a topic that is a little different kind of than my standard weep stuff. Today I would like to talk a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, that is correct. If you are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, that is kind of how it used to look in the past. And this is where we are now. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons, ladies and gentlemen, currently updated for modern audiences and fully embracing modern trends. Yes, this is where we are currently, or rather, that's where we've been in 2024. This is an image from their Pride celebration. As you can see, there's a lot of colors here, very pastel, very lovely, all friendship and magic. However, there's a couple of problems with this. Maybe I'm going to start with the really big one, the elephant in the room, which is essentially that this is a trend that has been going on in Dungeons and Dragons for the last couple of years. Very clearly, Wizards of the Coast is moving away from the standard kind of medieval-esque fantasy and into, well, pastel and basically chasing modern trends. And there's been also a lot of very strange efforts to, I guess, decolonize D&D and make it less racist, because apparently Dungeons and Dragons was somehow full of incredibly racist stereotypes, according to people at Wizards of the Coast. As you can see here, top right corner, yes, these are the new orcs. So what changed? So apparently orcs were looking too close to black people, so now they look more like Mexican people, not racist at all. As you can see, bottom right, this is a reference to one of the newer Taylor Swift albums, Life of a Showgirl. It is the Life of a Showgirl. That has been promoted on the Dungeons and Dragons Twitter account. And in general, there's like a move from what actually made Dungeons and Dragons, hint, Dungeons and Dragons, yes. So a lot of magic, a lot of fantasy elements, a lot of, I would say, influences of J.R.R. Tolkien specifically, and people that came directly after him and continued his legacy. All of this is now moving away, and we are now moving into chasing modern trends, and I guess targeting a elusive and possibly existing, but no one has really ever seen them in large numbers, the modern audience. I like this post here from Sandy Peterson, Sandy of Cthulhu, here on Twitter. I think this one's is very telling. I don't understand. D&D grew out of fantasy fiction, as I mentioned. Name any fantasy story based solely on everyone living in a happy pastel town with enough monsters to keep it diverse. Yeah, this is very well put. One of the centerpieces of Dungeons and Dragons always has been challenges, conflict, and people being motivated to solve these conflicts. There's been violence as well, dealing with violence in a diplomatic way or applying even more violence for the player party. It has never been about vibes, about weird friendly atmosphere, which is the current trend. And here Sandy continues to write, I mean, my ideas of great fantasy are stuff like Lord Falls Bane, Shadow of the Torture, Fantastus, or A Voyage to Arcturus, and so forth. So basically, a number of other systems, and I'm guessing franchises, I'm not entirely sure here. Even the Oz books, which invariably do end in a highly diverse party, have toil and sorrow and danger before the end. Yeah, that's, as I said, that's always been a major part of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, all of this is being kind of sanded off, all of the corners and edges are being removed. If you go to the website of Wizards of the Coast, you are probably going to see a number of sheets about trigger warnings and stuff. So I don't necessarily follow what they're currently doing and why they're doing it. I'm assuming it's because of those modern audiences, but I'm not entirely convinced that those modern audiences even play Dungeons and Dragons. Because why would they? They are playing things that are kind of more full of vibes, like Fortnite, for instance, and tabletops. I feel like this is a bit of a thing of the past. In which case, I don't see a reason why they would have updated it. But just continuing with some more posts from Sandy Peterson here, I like this one specifically. So not only is this removal of sharp edges and anything that creates conflict problematic, but basically retconning and kind of recreating a number of monsters that were iconic to Dungeons and Dragons, like the Beholder here. And here's a description of what Beholders are. I kind of like this. Are violent and greedy, hungering for both wealth and power over others. And this is a direct quote from the rule set. Well, this Beholder, I'm not sure if it's powering over anyone. It's barely managing with its own over the top emotions here, with its central eye being basically a Care Bear symbol. If you guys still remember the Care Bear franchise, yeah, that's kind of the heart and heart symbol that they used to have. Now in the form of a beholder, nice and smiley, super friendly to everyone here. Yeah, I hate it. Here's some more. Oh, we have celebrating kobolds. Just a reminder from Sandy here. Kobolds are lawful evil. They're organized and cooperative, but thoroughly nasty to anything outside of their clan and even to each other much of the time. That is, again, quote from the rulebook. Well, these kobolds kind of like celebrating, it seems, so they're not your typical kobolds and probably have very little to do with Advance or with Dungeons and Dragons. And I think another very telling quote is this one from Christina Tasty. What exactly goes on in games like this? Very good question, Christina. Roll a baking check to see if your bread rises in the morning. Roll a natural 20 so the weather is sunny. A gaydar perception check. You don't want to play D&D, you want to play Stardew Valley. And nothing wrong with that, that's okay. Yeah, absolutely. There is nothing inherently wrong with you. Just take the current state of it separately from everything else. It's completely fine. If you guys want to celebrate, I guess, quote unquote, diversity in your Dungeons and Dragons, that is totally fine. I have absolutely no problem with this whatsoever. But again, this is not Dungeons and Dragons. That has nothing to do with the core of the franchise, with the thing that Dungeons and Dragons used to be, right? It has absolutely nothing to do with it. So why change it? The modern audiences are definitely not gonna jump in, and if you're kind of tired of this trend that has been going on, here we have some suggestions from Alyssa, the Pumpkin Queen. We have Castles and Crusaders by Trollord Games. We have Harboria by Northwind Adventures, Barbarians of Lemuria, Horde Wars, Shadow Dark, for instance, Untold Destiny by Hill Joet. So there's plenty of other options. To that, I might add Pathfinder as well, or simply playing on your own with your friends one of the older editions of Advanced Freudian slip again, of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, basically you can just tailor your own adventure and you can just look at it and be like, well, I'm clearly not the target audience, so I will not be buying any of the new rulebooks for sure, and just playing with our lads and ladesses, some of the older versions of Dungeons and Dragons. What I found also interesting about this entire story behind this image, apparently it's being mentioned by Patty's Parlor Games. As I mentioned, that was an image created for the 2024 Pride celebration by Wizards of the Coast. But apparently it's also now tied to a, what is it called? A Pride 2025 Pride collection. Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering 2025 Pride collection. All of the proceeds will benefit the Trans Lifeline. Okay, not a problem. You guys want to support, charity organizations or these kind of support organizations. Absolutely fair game. But apparently it's not really that simple, you know, in our world where politics are now being injected into every single franchise. See picture attached. Apparently this here, this here organization, this Trans Lifeline, it's not simply any organization, and apparently it has been doing some weird things. For instance, Trans Lifeline has a policy against non-consensual active rescue. Okay, we will not call emergency services or law enforcement without explicit requests. Okay, that's fair. That is interesting, but there's also quite some other updates. For instance, here that apparently Trans Lifeline is against prisons, is against detentions, and is also against ICE? Unrelated, I'm guessing. So we have Wizards of the Coast via Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering now supporting an organization that is actively working against law enforcement. How very interesting. I don't think you can sidestep these kind of issues, and this is in general like a very, very, very bad look for Wizards of the Coast. But yeah, that's basically it for this story. I have nothing more to add other than to say, if you guys are still willing to play Dungeons and Dragons, I highly recommend playing some of the older editions, or in general not buying the new rulebooks and not buying into this weird hyper modernized trend that Wizards of the Coast is now onto, and simply not financing any of this high politicization and propaganda. But that's it from my side. If you guys enjoy my content, please like and subscribe as usual, and I see you guys in the next one. Mata ne!